I'm James, 30, and just a month ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I work as an engineer, my wife Sarah is an architect, we've been together for 5 years, married for 2. We bought a house in the suburbs and were planning to have kids. Everything was standard, stable, maybe a little boring. And then there's my brother, Mark, 3 years younger. He was always my best friend, the only truly close person to me besides Sarah. Mark's a creative soul, constantly searching for himself, and he often needed my help, whether it was borrowing money, needing advice, or just a shoulder to cry on. I never said no to him. He's my brother. Family is sacred, that's what our mother, Evelyn, always taught us. And my father, Robert, always silently approved. It all started so quietly and subtly that it sickens me now to remember how blind I was. Mark started dropping by our house constantly. Before, he'd come by once every couple of weeks, but suddenly he was showing up almost every evening. At first, it wasn't a problem. He said he needed a place to work on his new project, that his rented studio was too noisy. Sarah was surprisingly welcoming. Too welcoming. They would laugh at private jokes that I didn't understand. They had their own topics that would suddenly halt the moment I walked into the room. I chalked it up to them finally bonding. I always wanted them to be friends, for our family to be this large, cohesive unit. And I was happy. Happy like an idiot. The culmination of this brotherly closeness happened last Tuesday. That was 3 weeks ago. I was supposed to be on a night shift, but due to a cancelled meeting, I came home a couple of hours early, around midnight. I left the car around the corner so I wouldn't wake Sarah with the engine noise. I planned to slip quietly into the bedroom, kiss her, and leave again so she wouldn't worry. I walked into the house, and the first thing that set me on edge was the silence. The living room light was dimmed, and muffled voices were coming from inside. A quiet, but clearly excited whisper. I recognized Sarah's laugh. It was different, deeper than usual. And a male voice. I immediately knew it was Mark. My heart sank for some reason, though I immediately chastised myself. They're probably just discussing his project. I quietly walked down the hall toward the living room archway. And froze. They were standing in the middle of the room, not extremely close, but their eyes were locked on each other. Sarah was holding some kind of blueprint. Mark stood slightly closer, pointing something out with a pencil. Then she looked up, and in her eyes was something I had never seen directed at me, a mix of desire and some kind of fierce, undisguised tenderness. This wasn't my Sarah, not my wife. He put down the pencil, and Mark took a small step forward. Everything else was like slow motion. He gently took her face in his hands, and they kissed. Not a friendly peck. It was a long, deep kiss. The kiss of two people who hadn't seen each other in a while and missed one another. The kiss of two lovers. I stood and watched it like a painting. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't understand what I was seeing. When they pulled apart, Sarah was smiling. That same deep, completely alien smile. And Mark, my brother, looked at her with such love that it physically twisted my insides. This wasn't a mistake, not a drunken lapse. This was something that had been going on. I could feel it in that perfect synchronicity, in that look. I clenched my fists so hard that my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to storm in, yell, and smash everything to hell. But I didn't. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the rug. The noise was faint, but they both flinched and sharply turned their heads. Their eyes widened. I saw in them not only the horror of being caught red-handed but also relief, as if they had been waiting for this to finally happen. I didn't say a word. I turned around and walked out of the house. Got into the car and drove. Where? I don't know. I just kept driving until I ran out of gas. 3 weeks have passed since that moment. 3 weeks of hell that I've lived through at work, in a rented hotel room, ignoring their endless calls and texts. I couldn't talk to them, couldn't look at their faces. I couldn't believe that the two people closest to me could do this. It wasn't just my wife's betrayal. It was a double betrayal, a stab in the back from my own brother. Yesterday, I called my mother. I needed someone to explain this world to me. Someone who would tell me it was a nightmare. I thought she would support me. I told her everything, my voice trembling, barely able to find the words. And her reply, which sounded like a verdict, was, "James, it's just a mistake. Don't break up the family. You need to forgive each other for the sake of kinship." She said it so calmly, so casually, as if I had complained about bad weather. I realized this nightmare was just beginning. I have nowhere to go but to deal with this hell. I need to find out how long this has been going on, and why my mother swallowed it so easily. And I have a terrible feeling that the knowledge will finally destroy me. I'm going home today. And I don't know if I'll see my wife there or my brother. Or both. I need to know the whole truth. And that scares me. I went back home. The air in the house was heavy, suffocating. Everything looked the same, but it felt wrong. The couch where they kissed, the coffee table where she'd rested her hand, it was all tainted. Sarah wasn't there, but her purse was on the kitchen counter, like she'd just left. The silence was louder than any sound. I checked my phone. She'd sent another 10 texts and called me 6 times since my last check. The last one was a simple, "Please, James, we need to talk." My chest tightened. I couldn't stand the thought of her explaining it, of her giving me some flimsy excuse. I couldn't stand the thought of hearing the lie in her voice. The one person I had to see was my mother. I drove over to her place. She opened the door, and her face was a mask of concern, but her eyes, they were different. There was a look of tired resolve, as if she had already gone through this conversation in her head 1,000 times and knew exactly what she was going to say. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back. "Mom, why did you say that?" My voice was hoarse. "About it being a mistake. You know this isn't a mistake." She led me to the kitchen table, poured me a cup of tea. It was a gesture of normalcy that infuriated me. "James, you're jumping to conclusions. Things get complicated. People make choices they regret. We are family. And family is all we have in this world. It's what you and your brother have always had." I stared at her, my blood boiling. "Family? Is that what you call this? Is that what you call him sleeping with my wife? You think that's just a little mistake? This is a betrayal. The biggest betrayal of my life. And you're sitting here telling me to just forgive and forget? What kind of mother says that?" Her composure cracked for a second. She took a deep breath. A mother who knows what's at stake. A mother who wants to keep her family intact. "This is not just about you, James. This is about all of us. About your father, about Mark. About the future. You have a chance to rise above this, to show compassion." The word compassion tasted like ash in my mouth. Compassion? So I'm supposed to show compassion to the 2 people who destroyed my life? Do you have any idea what it's like to find out your wife and your brother are together? To know that they have been doing this behind your back, in your house, in your life? She didn't answer. She looked away, her hands trembling as she held her teacup. "It's been a stressful time for everyone," she said quietly. "Sarah has been going through a lot with her new project, and Mark has been feeling so lost and alone. They found comfort in each other. It's a tragic story, really. A sad, painful mistake." I felt something cold creep up my spine. A stressful time for everyone? Her words were so hollow, so detached from the reality of what I was feeling. The more she talked, the more her narrative sounded rehearsed. I started to notice small things. Her reluctance to meet my eyes. The way she avoided using the words affair, or cheating. The way she kept framing it as a shared crisis, a we problem, instead of a direct violation against me. And then I asked the question that I hadn't dared to ask yet. The one that was gnawing at me. "How long, Mom? How long has this been going on? Did you know about it?" Her silence was the answer. A long, agonizing silence. She took a sip of her tea, her gaze fixed on the steam rising from the cup. "James, you don't need to know every single detail. Some things are better left unsaid. It's in the past now. We can move forward. No, I said, my voice rising. We can't move forward until I know the truth. Tell me. Did you know? She sighed, a sound of profound weariness. She finally looked at me, and her eyes, filled with a mixture of pity and guilt, told me everything. They confirmed what my gut had been screaming at me since the moment I walked into the house. She knew. She had known for some time. And she hadn't said a word. The realization hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just Sarah and Mark. It was my mother, too. She was a part of this lie. And the worst part was, I could see that she didn't think it was a lie. She thought she was protecting the family. And I was starting to realize that to her, the family might not be what I thought it was. After leaving my mother's house, I drove aimlessly for hours. The confession, or rather, the lack of denial, in her eyes had shifted something inside me. It wasn't just the shock of betrayal anymore. It was a cold, calculated anger. I realized I hadn't been an unfortunate victim of a mistake. I was the disposable piece in a family arrangement. I finally ended up at the local gym, just to burn off the rage, to move until I couldn't feel anything but the sweat burning my eyes. When I got back to the house late that night, the end of the 3rd week since I left, Sarah was there. She was sitting on the edge of the sofa, looking pale and small. She sprang up when I walked in, her eyes pleading. James, thank God. Please, just talk to me. I've been worried sick. I dropped my gym bag by the door. Worried sick? Or worried I'd tell Dad? I didn't yell. My voice was low, flat, and lethal. It was a control I hadn't known I possessed. She flinched. Don't bring your father into this. This is between you and me. And Mark. It was complicated. Complicated, I echoed. That's what Mom called it. She also told me to forgive you for the sake of kinship. Funny, isn't it? She's all about protecting the family unit. But which unit is she protecting, Sarah? The one with me in it, or the one with Mark? Her composure broke entirely. Tears streamed down her face. She was trying to help. She's always trying to keep us together. You know how she is about the family holidays, about everything being perfect. Perfect? I stepped closer, closing the distance. The only thing that's perfect about this is the execution of the lie. How long, Sarah? How long have you and my brother been seeing each other? She choked out a number. 6 months. No, 7. It started slow, just talking about projects, then it just happened. 7 months. 7 months of my life, a quarter of our marriage, had been a total farce. The intimate dinners, the talks about baby names, the quiet mornings, all of it was poisoned. But her answer felt incomplete, too simple. I knew there was a missing piece, and it was about Mark. And my mother? I pressed, the real conflict boiling up now. When did she find out? Sarah looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. She mumbled something I couldn't hear. Speak up, Sarah. When did Mom find out? A year ago, she whispered. About a year ago. It was before anything physical happened. She noticed the way we looked at each other when Mark started coming over all the time. She pulled me aside, into the basement, and she told me I needed to be careful. She told me she saw the potential there. The world tilted. Potential? What the hell does that mean, potential? She raised her head, her face blotchy and desperate, and spat out the unbelievable truth. She said that I suited Mark better? That Mark needed a stable, creative partner like me to truly thrive, and that you were too focused on your career, too rigid. She thought you were holding him back. She said she knew this was the way it was supposed to be. My mind snapped. My mother, the pillar of our family, the one who preached unity and loyalty, hadn't just known about the affair for a year, she had encouraged it. She had watched my marriage implode, not with regret, but with a horrifying sense of satisfaction. She had actively chosen my brother over me, convincing herself and my wife that they were the better match. My voice was a low growl, You're lying. My mother wouldn't say that. She wouldn't undermine her own son. She did, James. She helped us. When you started noticing how often Mark was here, she told us to use specific code words when texting, to talk only about blueprints and structural integrity when you were around. She said that Mark and I were her true concern, because we were the two artists. She called you the provider. That was your role. Just the provider. The insult, the dehumanization of it, was almost worse than the betrayal. I wasn't her son. I was the ATM. I was the placeholder. I stood there, staring at the woman I had married, realizing I was just a ghost in my own life, a living obstacle to their perfect, curated family. The tension was so thick I felt like I was going to suffocate. This wasn't a family. It was a conspiracy. And I was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. That night, after Sarah's confession, I couldn't stay in the house a second longer. The walls seemed to be closing in on me. Her words, that I was just the provider, that I was too rigid, and that she was a better fit for my brother, rattled around in my head, a constant, sharp, and painful echo. I drove out to my father's fishing cabin, an old, quiet place he used to take me to when I was a kid. It was the only place I could think of where I could just be alone, where the air wouldn't feel so polluted with their lies. I sat there in the dark for what felt like hours, staring at a phone that felt impossibly heavy in my hand. My mother and Sarah had built this entire, fragile world on a foundation of lies, and they had roped Mark into it. My father was the only one who didn't know. He had to know. He was a man of principles, of honor. He would be just as disgusted as I was. He would understand. He was my last hope. I finally called him. It was late, past midnight, but I didn't care. He answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. James? Son? Is everything okay? Dad, it's not, I said, my voice breaking. I need to tell you something. It's about Mom. And Sarah. And Mark. I told him everything. I didn't hold back a single detail. The first time I saw them, the weeks of my silence, my mother's casual dismissal, Sarah's confession that my mother had been in on it for a year, orchestrating the whole thing because she thought Sarah was a better match for Mark. I laid it all out, a gut-wrenching, ugly story. I expected shock, anger, disappointment, anything. Instead, there was nothing. A profound, unnatural silence. The only sound on the line was his slow, deliberate breathing. I could almost picture him, sitting on the edge of his bed, his face unreadable. Dad? Did you hear me? I asked, my heart pounding. I heard you, son, he finally said. His voice was different now, devoid of emotion, and even colder than mine had been with Sarah. You're telling me that your wife and your brother were seeing each other? They were having an affair, Dad. And Mom knew about it for a year. She helped them hide it from me. She said I was just the provider and that they were a better match. Do you hear me? Your own wife said that about her own son. Another silence. Even longer this time. It stretched on, until I felt myself on the verge of screaming. Dad, please say something. Anything. Aren't you angry? When he finally spoke, his words were the last thing I ever expected. James, your mother is a good woman. She makes mistakes, but she always has the family's best interests at heart. She's your mother, and you have to respect that. We don't always understand her methods, but her heart is in the right place. I was numb. I felt like the world had been pulled out from under me again, but this time, it was by the one person I thought I could trust. My father, the man who I thought stood for truth and justice, was defending my mother. He was defending the lie. Dad, what are you saying? She helped them cheat on me. This isn't just a mistake, this is a conspiracy. We'll talk about this later, he said, his voice now filled with a dismissive finality. This is a conversation that needs to happen face to face, with all of us present. Not over the phone, at this time of night, when you're upset. You need to come home, son. We'll talk about how to fix this. And there it was. Fix this. He wasn't talking about fixing my broken life. He was talking about fixing the family's image. He was talking about patching up the lie, sealing the cracks, and moving on as if nothing had happened. He wasn't on my side. He was on their side. He had chosen the perfect family over his own son. The realization hit me with a force that made me sick to my stomach. This wasn't a family. It was a cult of convenience, and I was the one who had finally woken up and seen it for what it was. I hung up the phone. I had no family left. I was completely, utterly alone. The only thing left to do now was to make my next move, and I knew exactly what it was going to be. I spent the next 2 days, the final days of that horrifying month, at the cabin. The silence from my father after our phone call was more deafening than my mother's betrayal. It solidified everything. My entire family unit, mother, father, brother, and wife, had been working against me, either actively or through silent complicity. I wasn't just betrayed, I was ejected. I drove back to the house on Friday afternoon. I had a single bag packed with just clothes and essentials. I felt an eerie calm, a detached coldness that had replaced the rage. When I walked in, Sarah and Mark were there. They were sitting in the living room, not touching, but the atmosphere was thick with their shared anxiety. They looked like two children waiting for the principal. "James, thank God," Mark started, standing up. He had the audacity to approach me. "We need to talk about this." "I'm so sorry. I know this looks bad, but..." I cut him off. My eyes were fixed on his. "It doesn't look bad, Mark. It is bad. It's the worst thing you could have done. And I know everything. Not just about the affair, but about Mom. About the provider comment. About how she thought Sarah suited you better." Mark's face went white. He looked at Sarah, a silent, accusatory question passing between them. Sarah just buried her face in her hands. "I need to say this once," I continued, my voice measured and firm. I looked from him to Sarah. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. This house, the life we built, it's all based on a lie that your mother not only tolerated but encouraged. You all chose this arrangement. You chose to build your happiness on my destruction." Sarah looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Please, James. Don't do this. We can fix it. I'll cut off contact with Mark. I'll do anything. I love you." I felt nothing. The words just bounced off me. "No, you don't. You love the stability I provided. You love the life. And you love him. And that's fine. But I won't live in a marriage that's constantly being vetted and managed by my mother. I won't live in the shadow of my own brother, waiting for the two of you to sneak off to the basement." Then the door opened. My parents walked in. My mother had clearly orchestrated this final, intervention-style confrontation. "James," my mother said, stepping forward. "We are here now. We are a family. You need to stop this childish behavior. We can fix this. We'll sit down, we'll talk, and we'll forgive." I looked at my father, who stood silently beside her, his arms crossed, his face a stone. He was the most damning confirmation of all. I faced them all. The four of them, my mother, the conductor, my father, the silent approver, my brother, the thief, and my wife, the accomplice. "There's nothing to fix," I stated, pulling the car key and the house key off my keychain. I placed them deliberately on the coffee table. "You all want a perfect family? You all want a life where Sarah and Mark are together, approved by the matriarch, and the logistics are taken care of?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was the deed to the house, which I had notarized and transferred that morning into both Sarah's and Mark's names. I didn't want the house. I couldn't stand the thought of profiting from the place where I was betrayed. "Here's the house deed," I said, sliding it across the table. "It's yours now. Both of you. It's paid off. Live here. Be happy. You have your perfect arrangement. And Mother, you can manage the family's finances and happiness exactly the way you always wanted. I looked directly at my mother. You didn't want to destroy the family? Fine. I won't. I'm just leaving it to you. You can have your illusion of perfection. I want no part of it. I didn't wait for their responses. They were frozen in shock, their curated reality crumbling around them. My mother looked horrified, my father looked defeated, and Sarah and Mark just stared at the deed. They got their perfect setup, but they also got the knowledge that they had won it by destroying me and that I had paid the final price. I walked out the door and never looked back. I drove away from the suburbs and headed for the city, for a life that was messy, difficult, and uncertain, but at least it was mine. The marriage was gone, the brother was gone, and the parents who betrayed me were gone. In just 1 month, I had lost my entire family, but in doing so, I had finally gained something real, freedom from their lie. Now, 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in a cheap apartment with an empty fridge, but I don't feel empty inside. I feel clean. I think about what my mother said about kinship. Sometimes, the deepest act of self-preservation is recognizing that the people tied to you by blood are the very people you have to cut yourself free from to survive. And I wonder, was the mistake the affair, or was the real mistake me trying to fit into their version of a family for all those years?